Very good evening. I'm Chaiti Narula and thank you for tuning into WION World is One News for the Union Budget Special that we're tracking today all through the day on WION. Let's take a quick look at the headlines at this hour. Tax cut by 5% for those earning between 2.5 to 5 lakh rupees. No tax on earnings up to 3 lakh rupees, says the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in his FY18 budget speech. And crack down on political funding of parties. The maximum donation that a political party can now receive as donation in cash from one source is just 2,000 rupees. And the budget FY18 records the highest ever allocation for infrastructure sector in great news. 3.96 lakh crore rupees allocated for this. Big push for social and agricultural spending as well. Well, let's take a quick look at how the markets really reacted on the back of that budget, which was rather prudent fiscally, according to most market experts. In fact, we saw the Sensex and the Nifty have a soft, lackluster start in the start of the intraday trading session, where they opened almost flat. But by the end of the budget speech and at the close of the intraday trading session on the bourses, the Sensex gained over 450 points and the Nifty ended above the 8,000 mark on the budget day. You had Maruti, SBI, ICICI Bank, M&M and ITC as the top gainers for the day, while TCS, Infosys, those two IT stocks along with Sun Pharma, ONGC and NTPC as the losers on the Sensex. A quick look at how the Sensex and the Nifty really were flirting in the range of, and the Sensex was flirting around the range of 28,141.64 points, up 1.76% in today's trading session, whereas the Nifty crossed the 8,700 mark, like I mentioned earlier, closing in at 8,716.40, up 1.81% in today's trading session. As far as gold is concerned, was up 0.08% in today's trading session, almost up a percent, you can say. And the crude oil was down 0.69% in today's trading session. The rupee closed at 67.48 to the US dollar and 85.24 for the pound as well. Now, what is it really that will burst the bubble and can puncture this kind of a stock market rally? We will find out soon, as we're joined by a markets guest, Vivek Karwa from Chennai right now, joining us live to do a check on the markets. Vivek, we are seeing a fair bit of relief rally really coming in on the markets after the finance minister speech got done with. Do you think this is the start of a bull run for the coming year?
No, in fact, Chaiti, we were already in the bull run past 6 months. If you look at the indices, of course, there was temporary downfall due to the demonetization effect, but that also lasted for a very short term. And I think whatever said and done, today's budget had nothing negative. And nothing negative itself was a big positive for the markets, and they took it really positively. And one fear which market actually had is introduction of long-term capital gains.
And so what a bullet that they've dodged on that front, right? On the long-term capital gains tax front?
No, it was rumored. They haven't dodged. They have just kept their stance as it is. They have not done any changes in that law. So market was actually fearing that long-term tax might come, or there might be some tweaking in the time period, holding period of these stocks. So that has not happened, and hence it is actually very positive for the markets overall.
Okay, walk us through this. Now, there was also a sigh of relief for the foreign investors after the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley officially annulled notification on the retrospective tax as well. Walk us through how this would benefit the markets and the foreign investments that are coming into the Indian capital markets.
Last few days, there was one apprehension among foreign investors that how their transfer of shares would get treated. And we all are aware how this Vodafone case is still going on in courts. and hence this was going to be a big negative had it continued. So government was actually sensible enough in this side at least that they clarified on it 2 3 days back itself, and he has further clarified it today. So now from 1st April anyway, GAR is coming up. So there is enough clarity that nothing retrospective would be done on the taxation front of FIIs, and it is only going to be from 1st April. So that clarity was fair enough, and I think FIIs are happy with that.
You know, it is fantastic to see speculators, investors and traders alike really going out there and buying on the Indian bourses. In fact, if you take a look at all the different sectors, they're all up in the green, excepting pharma and IT, which have gone through a fair bit of profit booking. And that's partially because of the global cues, which are not auguring down very well with the insular policies of America as well. Coming back to the Indian markets, really, you are seeing that relief rally. You are seeing that the markets will enjoy rally in the next couple of months to come as well. What is it, in your opinion, that one thing that could perhaps puncture the rally if you were to point out?
One thing puncture the rally would be, say, any disturbance or say any between the relationship between India and US. In fact, as you said, all sectors are going up, and in fact, all sectors have gone up, and the two sectors which have come down today, IT and pharma, are due to Trump effect. So H-1B visa is already in the radar of US. Anything on that front could actually trigger some further sell down in the IT industry. And when it comes to pharma, see, the clarity is still not there. But I think something would happen that side also. So these two sectors would remain negative. Now, the biggest negative could be, which could actually puncture, is non-implementation of GST as scheduled. Because GST is scheduled to be implemented from 1st July. And I think if that goes smoothly, I think everything would be fine. Otherwise, there would be again uncertainty, because the tax system itself would not be there if GST is not implemented. So it has to come on 1st July.
A lot would also depend on the implementation of the schemes that have just been introduced. One thing is that you see a rally. The other thing is sustaining the rally. Now, the sustenance of the rally, perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, would depend on how the implementation of these reforms are really done by the BJP government, isn't it?
In fact, on various TV interviews, I've been continuously saying that 2017 budget would be the most important budget for Modi government, because now they have already done with, this is the third budget, and they have one more left in 2018. So whatever they announce this budget, it could actually be implemented in 2017 and 18, because 18 would be more of election budget, and 19 there's no budget plus election. So they have enough time right now, almost 24 months to go from here, wherein this policies can be implemented. And Chaiti, mind you, that everybody is aware, even Modi government is aware, that the expectations from them are really very high. Last government, maybe there was, say, lack of performance, nobody was bothered. But right now, even if they perform, they have to really outperform. Only then people would be happy. So they are aware about this challenge, and hence these things have to be implemented. Otherwise, they won't come back.
Right, Mr. Kawa, before we let you go, one last question. If, for the benefit of our viewers watching right now, which of the sectors after the budget speech really are in focus for you right now, and what are you betting the biggest on in terms of the sectors that will see a fair bit of rally in the months to come?
Don't keep it as budget alone. What I'll do is I'll link
Sure.
link the budget and GST
The other,
both.
yes.
Yeah, if I link these two big reforms which would actually come in the next few months, for me, banking sector really looks very, very interesting. And there's Basel III norms which also have to come in 2018, and hence government is going to really do a lot of recapitalization on the banking front. So banking should do well. The unorganized sector, which the companies which are literally in unorganized sector. So, for example, shoes, jewelry. There are these companies wherein unorganized sector would become unviable. The doing business itself would become unviable for them, and hence they'll come more into organized. And hence the listed companies are doing organized business in this majoritarily unorganized sector would actually do really very well. So that's the reason you'll find that today footwear companies have actually rallied a lot. The third sector would be goods and that is transportation industry, I'll say, due to GST, because again, transportation and logistics would do well. Firstly, GST is coming, and I don't remember the amount, but 2 lakh odd crores have been announced for the transportation sector also.
Right.
So I'll say banking, transportation, and unorganized sector.
So banking, transportation and the unorganized sector are the three takeaways and the key focus of the sectoral indices that we need to focus on as far as the capital markets are concerned. Thank you so much, Mr. Karwa, on that note for joining us and giving us a perspective on how the markets are likely to behave on the back of the FY18 budget. Now, India's Finance Minister Arun Jaitley presented a budget that will spur growth by increasing spending on the rural areas and infrastructure as well. He has also given a relief for the middle class by halving the tax burden on those earning between 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh rupees. Jaitley also took major steps to double farmers' income as well. Here are some of the highlights of the budget speech 2017-18.
I therefore propose to reduce the existing rate of taxation for individual assessees between the income 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs to 5% instead of the present rate of 10%. This would reduce the tax liability of all persons below rupees 5 lakhs income either to zero with a rebate or 50% of their existing liability. In order not to have any duplication of benefit, the existing benefit of rebate available to the same group of beneficiaries being reduced to 2,500 available only if to the assessees with income up to 3.5 lakhs. The combined effect of both these measures will mean that there would be a zero tax liability for a person getting income up to 3 lakh rupees and a tax liability of only 2,500 for people with an income of 3 to 3.5 lakhs. If limit of rupees 1.5 lakhs under Section 80C investment is used fully, tax would be zero for people with an income up to rupees 4.5 lakhs. The FIPB, the Foreign Investment Promotion Board, has successfully implemented e-filing and online processing of FDI applications. We have now reached a stage where FIPB can be phased out. We have therefore decided to abolish the FIPB in the year 2017-18. A. The maximum amount of cash donation that a political party can receive will be 2,000 from any one source. B. Political parties will be entitled to receive donations by check or in the digital mode from their donors. C. A donor could purchase bonds from authorized banks against checks and digital payment only. The target of 5 lakh bonds and 10 lakh composite pits announced in the last year budget from Manrega funds have been fully achieved. In fact, against 5 lakh ponds, it is expected that about 10 lakh farm ponds would be completed by March 2017. During 2017 and 18, another 5 lakh ponds would be taken up. Participation of women in Manrega has increased to 55% from less than 48% in the past. Honorable members would be happy to note that in the budget provisions of 38,500 under Manrega in 2016-17 has now been increased to rupees 48,000 crores in 2017 and 18. This is the highest ever allocation for Manrega.
वित्त मंत्री के साथ साथ उनकी पूरी टीम भी अभिनंदन के अधिकारी है। ये बजट देश के विकास के लिए पिछले 2.5 वर्ष में जो कदम उठाए गए, जो फैसले लिए गए और भविष्य में और मजबूती के साथ आगे बढ़ने के इरादों के बीच ये एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कड़ी है। इस बजट को मैं देख रहा हूं। एक अन्य महत्वपूर्ण कदम है कि रेलवे बजट को जनरल बजट में मर्ज कर दिया गया है। इससे पूरे ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर उसको इंटीग्रेटेड प्लानिंग में मदद मिलेगी। सरकार का लक्ष्य 2022 तक हमारे देश के किसानों की आय डबल करने का इरादा है, दोगुना करना है।
All right, we have Sumit Chaturvedi, our chief business correspondent, and Kartikeya Sharma, our chief domestic correspondent, joining us live to give us a live hit really from outside the parliament. Good evening, Sumit. Good evening, Kartikeya. You all are standing there right amidst the thick of action outside the parliament. Now, just to sum up the budget really, this budget looks to be fiscally very prudent, and that's what I'm picking up from India Incorporated. And also welfare economics has been really married with the new wave of reforms with the FIPB abolition that we're seeing, political parties receiving donation only of up to 2,000 rupees from one particular source, that too only by check or through a digital transfer, and the fiscal deficit target of 3.2% for FY18 and 3% for the next 3 years going forward as well. First up, Kartikeya, let's start off with you. What is your sense in terms of the lay of the land of this budget, and politically as well, what is the opposition also saying at this point of time? And give us a few reactions that you're picking up from outside the parliament on the back of these factors.
Yes, Chaiti, you see, the budget has a lot of things for a lot of people. If I have to just evaluate the budget as a political commentator, I would say that it's innovative, it's fresh. It's not adventurous, but Sumit, it is bold. It's a budget within the fiscal realm which is available to the government of the day. But I think the most important aspect here, Chaiti, to me is the political reforms of elections have been incorporated in the budget. That could have been an executive action, a standalone. But I think Arun Jaitley, after consultation with the Prime Minister, has incorporated it. Tell me, and just break it down for our viewers, Sumit, what does it mean? Because 20,000 was a leeway, sort of a gapping hole which was being exploited by the political parties for the funding. Now it has been brought down to 2,000. So the issue is, will it make a substantial difference? Or will again the politicians find a loophole? Because if it succeeds, our elections will become cleaner, whiter and transparent.
Well, as I have spoken to some corporates and they have put a term to this, is corporatization of political funding. So here, the political funding has been brought down from 20,000 to 2,000 rupees. Also, two interesting facts have been put in. First, the political parties can go and donate and get the donation as much as they want through checks or digital transaction, which is another commendable step, because that will eliminate a lot of black money which comes into political parties. The third thing which they have really brought out is allowing political parties to come with bonds which they can issue. So registered political parties can issue bonds.
Corporatization of political parties, funding of, I would say corporatization of funding, that's the word?
Absolutely. So since day one, this government is working like a corporate, and coming from Prime Minister Modi, he is quite close to corporates or corporate culture. Coming from there,
which you would not like to admit, because you know that's Chaiti, that's one issue which the Prime Minister had been dealing with. Soot Boot ki Sarkar, he was attacked by Rahul Gandhi. So I really don't know whether when you say close to corporates, how much the Prime Minister or the ruling dispensation will take it. But I think the question which I would really like to ask you, because I met Ahmed Patel, I interviewed him, the political secretary to Sonia Gandhi. I met Skill Development Minister, also Rajiv Pratap Rudy, number of ministers. And the sense I got from the opposition, Chaiti, was they were not very, very appreciative of the tax slab reform. They said it's not bold enough. Is it correct? Is it correct on part of opposition, Sumit?
So, no, Kartikeya, you know, just before that, you know, when Kartikeya, you're talking about the taxation now. From what I'm understanding and gathering is that the SME sector seems to have been given a boost from the 30% slab that we saw earlier. It's brought down to 25%. In terms of personal tax, I don't see much of a difference really when it comes to the salaried employees. But yes, for a lower income bracket, they've halved it from 10% to 5% as well. And really no mention, Kartikeya, absolutely of the GST or the indirect tax regime. That was something that surprised everyone as well.
No, absolutely, Chaiti, I completely agree with you that that component was absent, because I had been covering the GST Council, and my hunch is, though Mr. Jaitley has made this, or he has come out with a pronouncement that it will be through by April, but I still have my doubt. You see, this is the first budget when a political party has boycotted it. a regional party was not there. A first time when the budget went through commotion even before that. So, Chetty makes a very relevant point, and this again Ahmed Patel made. When it comes to the people, middle class, those tax slabs, I would say, interventions have not been dramatic enough.
But if you look at data, 75% or 80% of the people are in the tax slab between 2.5 to 5 lakh. So out of all income taxpayers, 75% fall in this slab where the deduction of 50% has been given, mind you, and the other people will also get a reduction of 12,500. So they have clearly focused on a lot on the clean people who pay their taxes properly, which falls into the category of 2.5 to 5 lakh.
Chetty also made a very important point. Chetty says that GST did not find the mention. Though yesterday, the whole demonetization was sitting heavy on the Economic Survey of India.
Well, absolutely, Karthike. The reason here is that GST is something which they don't want to touch or want to focus. Clearly, the focus here is on different areas, and this government has a particular habit of making announcements out of the budget so many times. Well, remember, demonetization did not wait for budget to come, or many announcements that happen in the economy about relaxing of FDI, they did not wait for budget. So they have kept GST for some other day. So very much likely that GST announcements will come within a month or so. One important point I would like to point here is that they have not tinkered with any of the excise duties. Well, every year, if you see over the last few years, there was either cut down of excise duty on FMCG, auto manufacturing, or bringing them up. Okay. So here they have not touched it because that is one sector they want GST to deal with, and that's why they have not touched with excise duties at all. So that's why GST will find mention over the next few months.
I'm glad, Karthike, that he mentioned about the excise duty bit. Maybe you or Sumit can answer this question for me, really. Will the government be able to now gain on the back of the crude prices globally increasing? Right now, about $50 to $55 per barrel is the new normal as far as the crude oil prices are concerned. The government for the past so many years has been benefiting on the crude prices remaining low, and the higher excise that it was charging was a great revenue spinner for the exchequer as well. Now the crude prices are seeing an uptick. Few analyst reports that I'm seeing since morning say that it could reach all the way up to $70 a barrel. So really, either they bring down the excise duty on the ATF pricing and the crude oil prices as well, or then pass on the the increase in the prices and make the end consumer bear the brunt of it as well. There's not much clarity as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I could be wrong. Why don't you throw some light on that? And going back to the same point, the fiscal deficit target, how are they going to be able to achieve of 3.2% in this fiscal year? What is their plan of action? There's been no clarity really on that front.
Absolutely, you're bang on. Both Gaurav Gogoi and Ahmed Patel, you made this point, which Chetty is just summing it for us. Chetty says that, the whole benefits of the petrol or the crude prices, even the excise, which has been increased, the benefits have not gone down to the consumer. It has not been transferred. The same thing was part of Ahmed Patel's, the charge on the government in my interview. So Chetty is asking, how will the benefit go down to people in terms of the fluctuation which the crude has seen, and in terms of the money which the government has reaped through exercise? When will that happen? And second question which Chetty wants, or answer which Chetty wants, is in terms of physical prudence, Sumit.
Well, first of all, in case of petroleum, when crude was very low, when $35 a barrel, clearly that $15 was a windfall profit, as was mentioned in economic survey yesterday also, that this windfall profit will not be there anymore. So when this windfall profit was there, all governments, including Delhi government, including the center government, all governments used this money to fill their coffers. Coffers not in the wrong sense, but in the right sense, to use it for infrastructure and public purposes. So that money was clearly used for infrastructure and public purposes. And now going forward, there is very less likelihood that because of the crude prices going up, there will be less money left with them to spend to these for these areas. So that is why government is not likely to use that money or touch that money for any of these public purposes. Second big important point, in fact, I would like to raise here is that what happened to the money that has come to banks, that windfall profit which we were estimating will come 1 to 2 to 3 lakh crore, which will come as a result of demonetization. Well, government has not touched that money or that money which has come as a result of demonetization. 86% of the money has been renewed. So a lot of money has come to government which can be used for public purposes. Government is clearly not clearly opening their cards at this moment. What are they going to do with that money? But yes, as far as crude money is concerned, the money which came to them when the crude prices were low, even then they did not use that money to give to public directly.
Right.
That's why that money will be used later on also. And coming to fiscal prudence, yes, one thing is very sure, whenever there is more spending, you borrow a lot. And if you borrow a lot, the fiscal deficit increases. So here they have come from 3.5% target to 3.2% target. And for the next 3 years, 3% target.
I think that's a good point, Chetty, because I remember my conversation with Mr. Jaitley last year, and he said, we will have a budget which is within our means. And I think that's where the government has been pretty fair and pretty consistent. The budgets have been within the mean. They have been bold, but not adventurous.
And they haven't really, Karthikeya, been very populous as well. Somewhere it looks like that the finance minister is walking on a tightrope as far as this budget is concerned, and perhaps the budget to come, which is next year, could be fairly populous ahead of the elections as well. Why don't you throw some light, Karthikeya, because you're the best person to do this, on the political circus that surrounds the budget really this year ahead of the 5 state elections that we're seeing, and the next budget to come really, which is pegged to be more populous than this one ahead of the elections as well. Karthikeya, why don't you also tell us about what the reactions are coming in from the opposition parties on this particular budget that the BJP is presented and tabled in the parliament today?
Yes, Chetty, I'll break it down into 2 parts. And you're right. You see, the government has been physically very, very prudent. And the reason is very simple. In past 30 years, 30% of the state governments in this country, 30% of the state government, they have been physically imprudent. They are running into losses. They have, I would say, they have to borrow money from the center. They are not physically, I would say, sustainable unless they get a dole. It's like West Bengal. It's like Uttar Pradesh, like Bimaru states. So the government has to bear that burden from past 35 years. That's a very important thing, and somehow those structural reforms are required where state governments themselves either become profitable, if profitable is not the correct word, healthy in economic sense of the word. But politically speaking, both left parties, Congress, and other political parties, they attacked the budget on the on agricultural issues. They were attacking the government on the issue that you have continued with our policies or subsidies, whereby, but you have been attacking us in public forum, in media, on the issue of subsidies, whereby you have continued. And the best example has that been of Narega. Narega was publicly criticized by the Prime Minister, and Narega became a campaign theme, but investments in Narega has increased. And not only investments, the commitment has also increased, Chaitanya.
Correct. Absolutely, Karthikeya. Thank you so much for joining us live and bringing us up to speed with everything that is happening outside the Parliament. Karthikeya and Sumit Chaturvedi right there, bringing us up to speed. We will stay with them and come back to them in just about a bit. But good time now for us to take a quick breather right here on WION World is One News. Our entire all-encompassing coverage for the Union Budget FY18 continues on the other side of this break as well. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying tuned to WION World is One News, where we get you an all-encompassing coverage of the Union Budget FY18. I'm Chaiti Narula and welcome back. Now, the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, or the CII as it's popularly known, Naushad Forbes, spoke to our Chief Business Correspondent Sumit Chaturvedi on the budget, its big hits, its big misses. Let's listen in to that interview. All right, we're going to bring in the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Naushad Forbes, who spoke to our Chief Business Correspondent, Sumit Chaturvedi, on the budget's big hits, big misses. Of course, a few takeaways of the Union Budget happen to be the fiscal deficit target of 3% for this year, or rather 3.2% for this year and 3% for the next 3 years going forward. Disinvestment being the second key takeaway. In terms of the misses, really, we failed to look at the real estate sector and what the Union Budget really did on the back of the slump that the real estate sector is facing as well. In a short while from now, we will be able to listen to the conversation of Sumit Chaturvedi, who is our Chief Business Correspondent, who is talking to us about the budget that focuses on the rural economy, thrust on infrastructure, on digital economy, and broadening the tax base as well, and the agroeconomic benefits from a targeted budget allocation and focus on farmers' income rather than the diffuse spending on the sector as a whole. As far as the affordable housing sector is concerned, one takeaway from that has been that it has been given the infrastructure status, and that probably would revive the housing sector along with the interest subvention allowed earlier. But that's been a bit of a miss from the budget as to what more really has been done for the real estate sector. Few hits coming along, few misses coming along, but life goes on, the union budget goes on, and of course Sumit Chaturvedi, our chief business correspondent, caught up with Naushad Forbes on just this. Let's listen in to that conversation.
First of all, thanks for talking to us. You've been talking to us earlier also, sir.
Sure.
How do you rate the current budget, sir?
So we think there were several useful things in the budget. First of all, and I think start with the big picture. I think keeping the fiscal deficit at 3.2% makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, that fundamental of actually having the fiscal deficit in control is the best way of building a foundation for long-term sustainable growth. Second, some useful measures. For example, having all companies with a turnover of less than 50 crores, reducing income tax on those companies to 25%, again something that's very welcome, because that again covers 96% of all companies. We would have liked to have seen it to be 100% of companies, but at least 96% of companies being covered by that move makes a lot of sense. And then the strong investment in rural infrastructure, in rural income generation, again something that is needed and necessary, and the road building and infrastructure program, again necessary. Then many useful things, getting rid of the Foreign Investment Promotion Board. Total sense, we hope it's the first of many. Right? We have many institutions that need to be scrapped that serve no purpose today. Talking about how we would address disputes, PPP disputes, through the Arbitration Act of 1996 makes sense. We have to see the detail of what's actually proposed. So there were many markers of useful things to come.
So in the light of demonetization or a kind of a cash shortage, you think enough steps have been taken to put cash back into hand of people? Are you satisfied with that?
So we think that there were many measures to address incomes and cash availability at the lower end of the market. Probably not enough at the higher end.
Okay. On railway budget, sir, are you satisfied? What all steps have been taken?
The setting up a safety fund makes a lot of sense, and it's a safety fund. It's a 100,000 crore safety fund that would be used over 5 years. Makes a lot of sense. And second, redeveloping over 25 stations, something that we've recommended from CII. Again, something that is very good to hear.
So one last thing: any sector he should have touched and he did not touch at all?
I'd have liked to have seen more done on the corporate tax side, and I'd have liked to have seen more done specifically on innovation and on investments in technology by both firms and higher education institutions. To set up a national innovation fund is something that we'd recommended. It's important to the country's future, and those are the two areas that I would have liked to have seen more focus.
And digital literacy and financial inclusion have been really the key area of focus of the union budget and the finance minister, especially after the demonetization of 500 and 1,000 rupee notes took place in November, and India decided to go from a cash-based economy to a less cash economy. To enable the smooth transition from a cash-based economy to a less cash one, it is very important that Digital India e-wallets and digital literacy gets the right kind of thrust. We ended up speaking to the promoter and founder of Paytm, which is India's first e-wallet, on what he thought of the budget as far as digital literacy is concerned. Listen in.
I must say that this is, I believe, is one of those incredible digital India budgets where the government has clearly articulated that they want to move transactions from cash to digital, and all sorts of incentives, whether we talk about small shopkeepers or large businesses, and also to the people and citizens of the country has been added. And like last year, if we remember, there was a lot of buzz around startup kind of incentives and SOPs that were given. While this budget takes care of the infrastructure spends and creating jobs in the rural economy, it very brilliantly takes up the agenda of digital and gives incentives to the whole ecosystem there. So I, as a digital economy guy and as like you said fintech person, I truly applaud the budget that it has been taken in the right direction there. Finance Minister declaring was that he wants people without mobile phone, without necessarily smartphone also to transact, and that is why Aadhaar enabled payment system where you use your biometric of your thumb to do the transaction has been pushed so nicely. Remember the UPI benefit that we discussed last year where the demonetization days UPI was being pushed, but the true push came when government consolidated all its effort and NPCI released that app called Bheem there, and our finance minister gave necessary incentives and support to the Bheem. So UPI ecosystem now sort of rides on the success of Bheem, and I believe that banks now can piggyback Bheem ecosystem, and Bheem extends to Aadhaar enabled payment system because Bheem requires still people to have a smartphone or a feature phone, but in the case of people who do not have, it can do the biometric transaction. So the reduction of duties, incentives on signing up on Bheem, incentives on merchants getting cashbacks are the true directions towards the cashless and expansion of the people and the merchants. Not just 10 lakh and 20 lakh, Paytm today is sitting with more than 35 lakh merchants. So I believe this country will have at least 1 crore, that is 10 lakh merchants, 100 lakh merchant there by the year end, which will be accepting digital payments.
Well, there you go. The fintech companies of India really welcoming the Union Budget FY18 as far as the digital literacy and financial inclusion is concerned. This budget definitely really makes a push for digital India. Now, what do startups have to say? Nishita Virendra, who's our correspondent in Bangalore, gets us the mood of what's happening in south of India. Let's take a look.
Well, since the focus this year has largely been on digital economy as well as the semi-rural and the rural sectors, the startup community in Bengaluru is not very impressed with Arun Jaitley's budget. Let's quickly talk to a few startup community founders right here in the city and ask them as to what they really think of the budget. I'm joined in by Shavinder as well as Santosh right here with me from Follow Class as well as Spotplay. Well, Shavinder, first I'll come to you. Your takeaway from the budget, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I think starting with positives, I think it was interesting announcements for fintech companies, especially with Aadhaar Pay and special RBI rules governing body decided for all the fintech wallet companies. So for them, there is interesting movements there. And also the tax relaxations of 50 crores, if we can reach that part, we believe very few people will be take advantage of that. But still I was expecting more, continuing from the startup India that they launched last year. That is kind of put on hold. We are not sure where those funds are, how. And I was expecting more towards on those lines, at least in this budget. So yeah, slightly disappointed with that.
Okay, slightly disappointed. Well, Santosh, how would you like to put it? Did you see your expectations fulfilled? We did talk to you right before the budget as well, and you said that you were looking for some tax relaxations, especially with import of goods for manufacturing right here in India. So did you see that happening in this budget?
It's not there, right? So it's been disappointing since that the big announcement last year by Modi ji about Startup India policy. We haven't seen that percolate to the startups yet. And now we were hoping something to come from the budget side. Now there's a push on the GST also, right, which is actually increasing the commodity prices for us. We being a technology startup, both on the hardware and software side, it becomes really hard for us to get the tax benefits, which is at 50 crore. I mean, obviously, if I reach 50 crores, I wouldn't be looking at budget shops, right? Today, there's no particular. India is big into entrepreneurship, so we were expecting the government to push more and more shops to upcoming entrepreneurs, because we would obviously want more people to get employed, right? If you're looking at an unemployment rate here, so it has to come down. That will only happen through the entrepreneurship, right? And there's no shops, which is given at 50 crores. What's for something like us, right? We are just starting up, and there are no funds available from the government side. Even the Karnataka startup policy is the only sort of a shining light for us, but there's nothing from the national side. There was a fund of funds which has not been disbursed. We are trying to get registered for the as a startup in India, but that is still not there. The certificate hasn't come in, so I don't see any positive at all for a startup community. We're just going on our own, right? We're just swimming on our own here.
Right, and also Mr. Arun Jaitley has focused this time on market-related training for many of the youth coming from the semi-rural as well as the rural sector. Do you think that is a positive move and that will enable the startup community as well? You will find talent emerging from the semi-rural areas as well?
I mean, these policies will take time for implementation, right? We've seen Startup India over a year now. Last year, January, it was announced. We haven't seen even a single entity getting benefit out of it, right, in India. So this policy is announced now, so we don't know how long it will take for, because you're talking about skill development. Skill development doesn't happen overnight. You're talking about rural and semi-rural. How do I go and employ people there, right? If I have to get them here, I should have enough wherewithal to survive my company, right? So that's a long-term solution that is there, but what's there in the short term for us to even survive here?
There you have it. The startup community in Bengaluru not very impressed with what Arun Jaitley had to offer through his briefcase this morning. In Bengaluru with video journalist Padmanabh Rao, Nishchita, WION.
Well, there was Nishchita getting us some views coming in there from Bangalore, where the startup community has not really welcomed this particular budget, complaining that the right kind of thrust and direction has not been given to Startup India. Now, let's listen in to Renault Managing Director Sumit Sahni on his views on the budget and what he has to say.
We're joined here by Mr. Sumit Sahni, MD and CEO of Renault India. Sir, thanks for joining us. First of all, how do you rate this budget? How do you see this budget?
No, this has been a very cautious budget, I would say, a very balanced budget, focusing more on rural economy, agriculture, infrastructure. So these are all positive things about the budget. Where the expectations were more, was especially for the manufacturing sector, we haven't seen much. We have to create jobs, which the finance minister said, but we need industry also to support those jobs. So I think on that front, we were expecting more, especially on the corporate tax side. There was a bit of disappointment. And I think we need to do something which is strong towards research and development, because this is the time for India to go into a big league. So some special incentives for putting money in research and development in India to promote Make in India could have been a good opportunity for taking India to the big league globally. So I think these are the areas which government should really look forward in future.
And sir, your auto sector has been hit by demonetization to some extent. Are you disappointed he has kept the auto sector out? He should have brought down excise duties on cars and all, which would have benefited you?
We were not expecting anything today because, we are going to have GST coming in, and, everybody is expecting some changes there. So I think today was not an expectation, specific to automotive sector. But I think overall economic growth, overall infrastructure growth will definitely help auto sector. And we are seeing those trends in last few months.
And the transactions above rupees 3 lakh has been banned or have been taxed. Does that impact you? Please help us understand. Do they impact auto sector? How many of people come to you to buy cars with cash upfront?
See, one thing is very clear. In automotive sector, if you buy a car, it's a recorded transaction. Because the prices are known. So yes, a lot of people in past have been coming with cash. And but it doesn't impact the automotive sector, because even if you pay in cash or you pay by check, it's a recorded transaction. So I think it won't make a big change to automotive sector.
So in a nutshell, FMS tried to strike a balance with all the sectors. He's tried to touch every sector. So is that the theme of the budget currently?
That's right. It was more popular budget. It was a balanced budget. But he could have done more. He could have been more aggressive to take India to the next league. And I think that is where we saw something missing.
There you go, Sumit Sahni saying that the budget was borderline populist, it was safe, and it was really balanced. Now, the industry of chambers has welcomed the union budget. Let's take a look at what they have to say about the budget.
Mr. Pankaj Patel, the president of FICCI, speaking to us here at WION. Sir, thanks so much for speaking with us. First of all, let's have your initial reactions on the budget.
So this budget is towards cleaning up the economy and also giving boost to the economy. Few things which we have seen here is a greater thrust on the rural economy, which is almost 70% of Indian economy. And I think the investment in there would increase the rural demand, which would actually help us to see more demand coming up and investment going up in the process. Also, the infrastructure investment, significant increase, which was expected, has been there. And I think that would help us to see that economy growing faster. The support to the several sectors, particularly the sector which is towards digital economy, is a very welcome thing. And I think it's the digital economy which can make our journey towards getting towards clean India, and I think getting out of the corruption-free India. The support to infrastructure status to the housing sector is a very welcome thing, and I think low income people will benefit a lot from the low-cost housing as well.
Okay. In your opinion, then, it's safe to assume that this was a budget focused more on economic justice than economic growth?
I think it is both growth and economic justice. And I think a growth without economic justice will be a liability for any nation. So we need a growth which is balanced between economic justice and also at the same time supporting growth. So that's the right balance the finance minister has achieved through this budget.
When you compare it to more the other budgets in recent years, do you feel that this has been perhaps more understanding of the current global economic situation?
I think the support to the export is a very welcome feature, and I think export would need a lot of support. When the global economy is in doldrum, India's strong economic growth also will help the local industry to grow better. So that's a good thing which has happened. Export, of course, is getting a boost here through infrastructure development in export area, which also is a welcome feature in the budget.
Also, there's been a fillip given to startups in India. Do you think that that's going to be a big thing, keeping in mind the recent news about the H-1B visas as well?
Yeah, good thing about startup, two things good about startup. One is the 5 to 7 years increase is a real thing. That's not realistic because a startup takes time before it starts making profit. So giving 7-year period is a welcome thing, and also additional support to startup is, I think, the right thing to happen, because I think Indian youngsters have a lot of capabilities, and I think this will actually help them to grow better.
Well, WION's Aisha Sindhu there getting us reactions from the FICCI as to what people thought of the union budget and what really the industry voices are making out of the union budget FY18. We also spoke to former president and chairman of NASSCOM, Som Mittal, and asked him how he rated the budget. Let's take a look at what he thought about it.
Mr. Som Mittal speaking with us here at WION now. Sir, just to start us off, in your opinion, what has been the biggest positive of today's budget?
Well, you know, I think this is a budget of continuity. There were very many areas that the finance minister touched. When you develop a budget for India, it's not easy because, you know, you got to touch every sector. And I think there was a lot of emphasis on the rural area in terms of public expenditure. If there was one area that could have been a little bit more emphasis was the, you know, how could we increase private expenditure? In the last several years, we've seen, you know, banks have been at a stress. Private investment is not coming in, and I think that's very essential to come in, because while there are some good moves on the MSME side, but large corporates play a very significant role. I think the impact of demonetization, which he did mention that he's going to increase the tax net. I wish he had actually shown evidence that he is going to be collecting more taxes this time, and in fact inputted that in the budget itself, rather than taking it as a you know, additional bonus or a cream. But on the other hand, I think areas like MSME, you know, many issues that the startups were having, promoting electronic manufacturing. So there are many good parts of the budget which are small in nature, but I think impact those sectors. But at a macro level, I would still say that we could have done a little bit more on promoting private expenditure. These are long-term projects. Right. You need to stimulate them, and this, I believe, would be the last budget of its kind, because the next budget will be the one before election, and is going to be different.
In terms of looking at India and the global picture and the Indian economy, there are a lot of countries looking at India right now. Keeping the global economy in mind, do you think that Mr. Jaitley's budget for this year looks at the impact perhaps of a global standpoints, and that it's been effective in that sense?
You know, I think it does focus far more on the Indian economy itself, promoting consumption here, which I think is good for the world, because if there is one bright spot around, it's India, which is still consuming, and there is growth here. I think the investment in infrastructure should be good for the global, for the world. I think we didn't see very many things about saying how we would promote exports in the last couple of years we've seen decline happening, one because of the stress that's in the market. But then I guess there are so many things to balance out that the finance minister had to do. But I think this should stimulate consumption, which I think should be good for everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for speaking with us, Mr. Mittal. Appreciate it.
There you go. Reactions coming in there from India Incorporated on what they make of the Union Budget FY18. Now, the bigger question is how the entire world views India after this particular Union Budget, which is touted by India Incorporated as partly populist, rather borderline populist, fiscally prudent and also very safe. We're going to bring you and dissect the entire Union Budget from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. tonight. So don't forget to join us for our special broadcast on the Union Budget Special at these times on WION World is One News. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Chaiti Narula signing off. I will see you again 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Stay tuned.